Hey Selali, I've got the man of the hour, the new celebrity on BiggerPockets. If you don't know already, I've got my friend here, Selali from the Scale Club community with RPM Eclipse, and he was able to land an interview as a property manager on BiggerPockets, which is amazing. I believe it was titled "Property Management for Beginners," the kind of PR hit that we all wish we could actually get. Selali, thanks for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so I want to ask you all about the Bigger Pockets interview and how you got it because I think that's a great story. But first, just for some context, somebody watching this, tell us about your market, how long you've been in the business, and ideal client for you there in Seattle.
Definitely, definitely. Um, Background here in Seattle, Real Property Management. Our deal clients are going to be primarily accidental landlords, those with a significant amount of equity in their home. Our typical client is going to have a single home in which they have likely a reasonable interest rate, a lot of equity, and are not feeling that selling makes the most sense at this time. Been in the business for about a year plus some, and been in real estate for about a decade as an investor myself. Formerly owned a loan signing agency, and then prior to that, I was a mortgage loan originator.
That's fantastic. Okay, so only a year, and somehow Bigger Pockets got you on to talk about property management, which I know is a big deal. So tell us the story. How did this happen? Did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them? How did you make this happen?
Definitely, that's a great question. One thing I would say I've learned in business is leverage is key, right? And leverage comes in a lot of forms, but one of the most pivotal components of leverage is relationships. Trying to find ways you can find wins for other people in which they'll invest in you and find wins for yourself. I have to shout out Carnegie a bit in getting me this opportunity because I'll say one differentiator about me is I sought out my relationship manager. We do have a relationship with Bigger Pockets in referrals and leads, but I did seek out my relationship manager because I believe people are the core of these service businesses. So I have to give a shout out to Becca Goldman. She was my relationship manager, and I specifically did ask in my first meeting with her about the potentiality of getting on the podcast. I've followed it for a bit of years, and people like to poo-poo on property management. We're kind of the villains of the industry, so I wanted to shed some light as to our goals. We're problem solvers at heart. Ultimately, a lot of us, it's hard to differentiate the quality property managers. So I planted that seed in October, and every month I reached out to say, how can I make you successful in your job? And the way she communicated that to me was by being engaged and being transparent about the relationship in our leads. And I made a significant effort to make sure she looked good in her position, make sure she had the resources she needed from me to see that their product was a good product on the lead side. And it took a bit of no's, it took about 5 months of no's, but the last thing I'll say to anybody who's looking for an opportunity which they believe will be successful or yield them success in their ventures, don't be afraid to ask, not once, not twice, not three times, maybe 5 or 6 times, and find a way to not make that next ask awkward. Sometimes that means adding a bit more value. Hey, Becca, how can I help you this month? How can I help you this quarter? How was your quarter last month? Right. So these are the few ways that I helped earn this opportunity and a few others we could chat about.
So it's great. So you were a customer of Bigger Pockets. Rebecca was kind of your champion inside, and her vested interest was in making sure you were happy as a client. But you were flipping the script, and you were actually checking with her, and you basically knew that you were building a relationship and kind of laying the foundation for this ask. Is that what happened?
You got it. You got it. And the last point I'll say is you want to seek unreasonable value and give it for free as much as possible. It's like, hey, Beck, I can't give you money, but I know that your role is an analytical role, and the better the data for you, the better you can use for your team. And that translates to any relationship. Same with my contractors. I tried my absolute best to yield them unreasonable value for free because that lets them know that I do care about them and I care about their outcomes, and there's a mutual benefit.
That's great. So that's amazing because I had dozens and dozens, closer to 100 clients sign up with Bigger Pockets, kind of the new tool that they had. But you're the one of let's call it 80, that actually said, hey, there's a bigger opportunity here and I'm going to use my relationship capital and do something. So kudos to you. I think that's amazing. And so talk me through what they, how that happened. Did they reach out and say, okay, we're going to do this? Or did you pitch them and say, I think that this is what you should be doing? How did you prepare for it? And what was the whole, what was the timeline like from the time you knew that this might happen to actually releasing it?
Great question. Great question. So I've got to say it was a bit of sales, right? Because the Bigger Pockets community is not so inclined to interview property managers. So there was a sales component, right? I boiled it down to demanding the drivers of your success wherever you can see them, and being proactive. So starting back in October, I had been following Bigger Pockets for many years prior, but historically I did never see that property manager presence. So the way I sold it, right, is ultimately I believe there's a differentiator in the property management world in which you're looking for, whether it be an advisor or an assistant. So what I've come to realize is there's a lot of ways people service clients, and I don't believe that that picture was painted properly in the industry, right? All property managers are not treated the same and equal. Whether you're charging 8% or 10% monthly, are you the property manager that's going to ask your client, hey, the fridge is broken in the unit, what do you want me to do? You pay that same cost for a property manager who is your assistant, of which if you're an advisor, I'm the type of guy to say, hey, Jeremy, I know you own this asset to generate income for your retirement. A negligible repair for a fridge is not going to be something you would care to spend too much time on. I've got a replacement for $500. I've got a high school guy that can drop it off for $50, $550, all in. Can I deduct that from your next distribution? And you're going to say yes. So the velocity and efficiency of that conversation is going to be a lot better on both ends than this one over here, but we're going to be charging the same. So in summary, the picture I wanted to paint is the Bigger Pockets community is a community of astute investors. They know what they're doing. They know what they want for the most part. They know the expectations they have of their asset. And a lot of them have self-managed their property. They know what to expect. So in that picture, I realized a lot of our competitors are in the assistant role. I choose to be an advisor in everything I do. So to Becca's point, I realized, wait a minute, I don't know that that message has been broadcast in the community. And I asked her that specifically. I said, hey, I know we weren't thinking about having a property manager on last month, but I just wanted to touch base with you briefly on some visibility I think would be beneficial for you, Bigger Pockets, and potentially the greater property management community, and help your investors find those relationships that are going to be most beneficial for them, right? Allow them the enduring business relationship, because property management at times can be a 5, 6, 7, 8 year relationship with a lot of clients. So it's not a transactional relationship where I could sell your home maybe in Bellevue, Washington for $2 million and make a $60,000 check. I may be working with you monthly to make sure that we maintain that equity and discuss other future strategies. Are we looking for a 1031 exchange? Are we looking to redevelop the property? How are we on the P&Ls, pro formas? Are we really into the financials of the asset, or what are our goals? So that was the conversation I wanted to have, and not just talk about the general logistics of property management, collecting payment, sending it out. Let's get really into the weeds of first principles. Why are we owning the asset? What are our outcomes? And how do you identify partners that can help engineer that outcome for your clients?
Excellent. Great. That was an amazing spin. So I think, a great takeaway from that is you really sold them not to, what's in it for me, which is a sales tactic all the way. You didn't say, hey, just put me on and I'm just going to sell my services. You said, hey, put me on and I'm going to reframe the mistakes that people might have about our industry. And this is going to be valuable to your users, which is just sales 101, which is amazing. I shouldn't say it's 101. That's actually advanced. Most salespeople don't do a good job of that. They like to show up and throw up, pitch themselves. And you were absolutely saying, hey, I know you have a problem. I can help you solve it. Here's why your life is going to be better if I solve it. And I think that's amazing. So on the show, it's amazing. I've seen the thumbnail. I've watched a portion of the show. It's fantastic to see you out there doing all that. My question is, what changed once you were on the show? Was it a rush of business, or are you using this to win over the current clients you're you have. What's happening now that you've been on the show?
Great question. So I would say the benefit of the show is it adds a bit of legitimacy and anchoring to the brand of Real Property Management. We've steadily been getting a bit more leads. As a matter of fact, I was at a property yesterday on the east side of Seattle, specifically from the BiggerPockets connection, and this gentleman had a valuable property of which he was moving out of, and found me on BiggerPockets, found the podcast, and though he was new to the community, he said, "Wait a minute, I've seen your face. I understand how you interact. At least I've earned that maybe 25% of trust I need to get to earn the opportunity to do business." So, uniquely to the opportunity, what I've seen is has been a great anchor for conviction as to why we should earn the business. I had another client yesterday with the property was about a $3.5 million home here in Bellevue, and that was the anchoring factor that got us the business. They said, "Why should we choose you?" It's kind of a hard-nosed gentleman, and I love to do business with people that are direct. I try not to sugarcoat conversation because I don't believe there's too many emotions in business. I try to be just very direct. My word means my word, and it's very important to me. But I shook the guy's hand yesterday, and he looked me in the eye and he said, "Why should I use you?" I said, "It's a great question. You should ask that." I said, "Outside of us being in business for 10 years and my background and love for real estate, I was actually recently on the biggest real estate podcast in the nation speaking about how you should interview property managers. So whether you choose us or a different property manager, I would behoove you to watch that YouTube video to get some tips on questions you could ask to figure out who would be your best relationship." Right. And I just left it at that. And the next day I had a contract in the inbox. So
Ah, what a great name drop and a brand name drop, right? Just super sly. Well, you don't have to hire me, but I did. I was on the biggest podcast about how to interview a property manager. Just go watch that. I love it. Just absolutely has got to create a huge authority impact for how they view you.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. And just anchoring the value as well, just because in this world, there's a perception that property managers are assistants, right? We're here to just do as we're told. We're here to just, go where we're told to go. But this allows me that conviction, right, to have the conversation about, hey, I believe we're the best, and here's why. And if you don't believe that, let's have a conversation about it. But we're not assistants, we're advisors, and we're make sure that your outcome is earned, whether that's just a quality tenant, whether that's potential redevelopment of your property, whether that's reviewing external opportunities in the industry.
Mhm.
We add a significant amount of value that you'd have to try us first to understand.
So I saw that the link to the video was in your email, which is fantastic. So that's already just a no-brainer. Everybody you're emailing, you're basically it's kind of like reputation by association, if you know that term. It's like this is why people do like product placement in movies, or they do these things. So now you've got reputation by association, which is amazing. One idea that I just want to say for people watching this or the readers, and I hope, Salali, you'll share this within the Scale Club community, is I think that you laid out the framework that a national audience cared about that was real estate investing, learning about property managers. So you kind of laid that out. And if you feel good about that interview, and that's like something that other people should know, I think any property manager, let's just say in Birmingham, Alabama, or Orlando, Florida, can just reach out to one of their most impressive real estate YouTubers or somebody who's got an audience, and let's call it Orlando, and they can say, "Hey, I'd really like to talk about the misnomers about property management," and they can use your interview to just basically create a blueprint for what they should be talking about. So I'd encourage you to tell your friends and spread the message.
Definitely.
Yeah, do you want to comment on that before I move on?
Well, just briefly, I'll say, I mean, you hit it on the nail, right? Alex Hormozy is a great kind of influence in the space of business. And one thing that he's realized, similar background in finance, is that, you do have a return on attention, right? How can you leverage an audience of people to call it a warm introduction, right? I spent about an hour just getting to know people on the phones, here's why you can trust me, here's my background, here's why I care about your opportunity. But if you can do that at scale, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20,000 people a month, with videos, Instagram, social media, LinkedIn, podcasts with local real estate investors, even educational opportunities, right? Return on attention is something that a lot of folks don't spend too much focus on, but to your point, evergreen content is some of the best margin lead generation opportunities that we have in this decade.
Agreed. Agreed. All right. So we saw the interview has already worked for you, which is amazing. But you are also using BiggerPockets. There's a reason this was on your radar. So anything you want to share about how you just use the tool for somebody who didn't get the fortune of being the one property manager that they finally highlighted? How are you using the overall website? How has it helped your business?
Definitely, that's a great question. So, in terms of using the website, the first answer I'll give is for anybody who's on Bigger Pockets, and I'm guilty as well, stay active. Have communications. The key is visibility, not just volume. Visibility means consistency, means interacting with people. I do a lot of Facebook interactions with a lot of investors locally on Bigger Pockets. I try to start a conversation when I see one within the area. Say, hey, by the way, if you're investing in Seattle, here are a few locales and zip codes that have development opportunity. But the key is visibility. How consistent can you be? How many conversations can you have? Quality. Earn the respect to be a touted professional in your geography and earn that visibility in front of those folks that can not only refer you business, do business with you, and add to your brand.
That's great. What's a good frequency? I mean, are you on there daily? You on there twice a week? And obviously you just admitted you're like, I could be a little more active. But what do you think is reasonable? Because we all have very busy schedules.
Definitely, definitely. So, not to operate in the arena of gray, but I'd say a minimum of 1 to 2 times a week, something I'm working on doing as well. You want to focus on a few vehicles that will yield you, right, the most success in terms of your visibility. So I'd say I always look at my calendar and I try to create a task matrix. I call it the 80-20 principle, Pareto's principle. 20% of your inputs are going to generate 80% of your results. I think for me personally, I was a bit fortunate to be on the podcast to yield a few thousand views, and that was something that I could leverage in my LinkedIn, my Facebook, and all of my social platforms so that the local area investors were able to contact me, reach out to me, and Bigger Pockets was kind of secondary. But I would say if you don't have the opportunity to leverage viewership like I was, a few thousand views, 10,000 views, start with 1 to 2 times a week. Try to add value. Use technology, right? ChatGPT, get some good ideas as to ways you can be unique. You have to avoid the typical talking points everybody knows about. We're going to place you a quality tenant. We're going to screen them well. We're going to tour the property and make sure it's taken care of. That's an expectation. What's your differentiator? How can you drive? It's all a branding thing, and not to pivot too much out of the consistency component. But me personally, I'll say transparently, Bigger Pockets as well yields you a lot more benefit in certain markets of investors, right? Seattle is not an investor's market. So my benefit of Bigger Pockets was getting visibility on the podcast so that I'd have an anchor of value. If I lived in Detroit or potentially Dallas, where we're seeing housing values about 45, 50, 60% cheaper than Seattle, right? Cash flow potential is significantly better. You could buy $1 million starter home here in Seattle. You could buy 4 2-bedroom homes in Dallas. An investor will likely look to Dallas. So in terms of activity on Bigger Pockets, I believe there's a much higher ROI in those markets of which investors flock to. So I'd say be consistent, communicate locally. 1 to 3 times a week is not unreasonable. I try to make sure I communicate a new value point on LinkedIn specifically at least once a week. On Bigger Pockets, I'm actually following up via LinkedIn with people who are starting posts. So I take it one step further. I see a post on Bigger Pockets. I'll reach out to that person on LinkedIn. I'll add them and I'll say, hey, I noticed your Bigger Pockets post. Can I set a one-on-one discussion with you about your ideas behind property management? So I just use it one as a lead funnel to get personal conversations going. So a little different, just because our community, right, is going to be a lot less of intentional investors. But I would say 1 to 2 times a week is key, but look at the output. How many people can you touch? How many people can you get in front of? And try to drive that momentum.
That's great. All right. So had this huge win. You got a lot of irons in the fire, which I can tell. Tell us about your goals for 2025 and what you're cruising towards coming out of this awesome victory.
Great question. Great question. So, personally, I have some pretty lofty goals. There's two big opportunities I think we need to capitalize on. Absolutely. Well, three, if we include the advent of AI. I think where a lot of people are kind of underestimating the impact that will have specifically to the property management industry, which is a whole separate conversation. I think we're looking at a few $1 billion of added margins in the property management industry in the next 2 to 5 years in the AI space, specifically in operational redundancies and labor. That's a separate discussion, so not something that I'm going to be working on here in the next year. But let's talk specifically about 2025. Obviously, we don't have COVID interest rates anymore, right? So the marketing success of old is not of new. What do I mean by that? Couple avenues that I think we as an industry and more specifically my company I'd like to target for this year is large multifamily. And by large, I mean 20 to 50 units. The commercial guys don't want to serve those folks because the margins are a bit too small. Once you go over 100 units, typically you're going to have an on-site manager and you're going to bundle your property management all on-site. But those guys, those 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 unit doors, they need support. And typically they're going to be those investors that maybe had a few individual doors, 1031 exchange, but they're new to the business and they need an advisor, not an assistant. So that's one item that I think is very pivotal for us to lean into, just because one door, one conversation is a lot less leverage than one conversation, 30, 40, 50 doors. So that's something that I would think is imperative we implement in the business this year. So I'm working on getting some operational strategies to make sure we can absorb that work and that I can convictedly sell pricing as well. So that's number one. Number two, ideally a brokerage vertical. You know, our appreciation in Seattle is a little bit wild. So our average price home is about $1 million. Most of our clients' homes are about 1.2 to 1.7 million dollars. That's our average priced home. And oftentimes the conversation I have on the phone is, "Hey, Selali, not sure if I should rent or sell the home." I said, "Hey, let's take care of both. My job is to give you the information and not tell you what to do, but advise you on where makes the most sense for your outcomes." For example, I had a client called me last month, has a $2.2 million home, no mortgage. I said, "I can rent this out for you all day for $5,000 a month, but that's going to be a gross return of 2.2%. If your objective for this asset is income, your net return is going to be 1.8. Does that sound like a reasonable return for you?" And I'm not going to give you the answer, but if you tell me no, then let's create a strategy to earn you a better return. And that would be a win for us with a $2.2 million sale and a referral potentially for new business. But additionally, you know, you have conversations of an advisor in that role and somebody who's looking for solutions in which you are just yielding them the information, right? A broker is always going to tell you you should sell. A property manager is always going to tell you you should rent. But if you're a fiduciary, as we call it in the investment world, you're going to be seeking Jeremy's best interest. Jeremy, what are your goals? If you tell me cash flow, I'm going to ask you, is this a reasonable cash flow? If you tell me no, let's figure out an opportunity outside of this, right? If you tell me yes, let's get this rented. But I think there's a lot of opportunity in our market to capture brokerage business, number one, which can yield future referrals. Number two, spoke to the points on AI a little bit, but that's something I feel is going to transcend into the next few years. And then lastly, multifamilies. We're a business in which we can definitely take advantage of multifamily deals, be that continuing education. This year, I'd like to do some CE for some local professionals to get visibility in that arena as well. So a lot of things in the fire, but the big word I would say for 2025 for Selali is strategic leverage. We got to be smarter with our time because we all have the same quantity of hours in a day. And if we're looking for the best outputs, we have to be strategic with our time, strategic with leverage, strategic with resources.
And not to oversimplify it, but because those are amazing. Do you have a measurable goal? Do you have like a door count you're trying to hit this year?
120 doors that's the minimum expectation for this year.
Amazing. And that will, where's the company at today?
So right now, in terms of, and today, as in quantity of doors we currently manage,
Yeah, exactly.
we're just under 500. Just under
Okay.
500.
So it's about
Yeah.
a 20% growth. That's why I was asking. So that's very ambitious. I think a lot of people watching this would be blown away when they get to the 500 door mark to still be growing at 20% a year. Obviously, there's churn, but that's amazing, and that's a great testament to the ambition you have and having a quality business development manager there who's thinking and speaking the way you are. I think that's what it takes to be able to pull off those goals. So I appreciate you, Solali. I'm blown away by what you did. We all were high-fiving each other over here at Renscale and in the Scale Club community as you did it because we thought it was amazing. So thanks for doing it and thanks for sharing the wins with us and sharing your story.
Thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate you and the team and all you do.
Awesome. All right.